There is a very specific moment that shifts everything, and it is not loud, dramatic, or explosive. It is quiet. It is internal. It is the moment you truly give up. Not the kind of giving up where you threaten to leave, not the kind where you withdraw for a few days hoping to be chased. I'm talking about the deep, grounded decision where your nervous system is no longer activated by them, where you stop explaining, stop defending, stop trying to be understood. That is the moment the narcissist experiences what psychology calls a narcissistic injury. To understand why this hits so hard, you have to understand how fragile the narcissistic structure really is. On the surface, it looks confident, sometimes even grandiose. They may appear powerful, self-assured, untouchable. But that confidence is built like a house of cards. It depends on constant validation, emotional reactions, and control. Your emotional engagement, whether positive or negative, was proof that they mattered. Your tears, your arguments, your attempts to fix things, all of it fed the structure. When you give up, you withdraw that supply, and when the supply disappears, the structure shakes. The narcissistic injury is not just hurt feelings, it is an identity threat. Their sense of self is constructed around being significant, superior, or central in your life. When you stop centering them, when you no longer orbit their moods or needs, they experience something close to psychological freefall. It feels like rejection at the deepest level. Not rejection of behavior, but rejection of their very existence as the most important figure in your emotional world. At first, they may not consciously recognize what's happening. The shift confuses them. You are calmer. You are less reactive. You are no longer engaging in circular arguments. You may even appear indifferent. And indifference is the most destabilizing response of all. Anger, they can handle. Tears, they can manipulate. But indifference, that suggests they no longer have power. This is where the internal collapse begins. The narcissistic injury triggers shame, intense, unbearable shame. But here's the critical piece. Most narcissists do not experience shame the way healthier individuals do. For many people, shame can lead to reflection, repair, growth. For the narcissist, shame feels annihilating. It threatens the false self they've carefully constructed. So instead of processing it, they defend against it. And defense often looks like denial, blame, or projection. They may tell themselves you were never that important. They may rewrite history, convincing themselves that they were the one who emotionally checked out first. They might even amplify your flaws in their mind to protect their ego. They were too sensitive, they were unstable, they couldn't handle me. These narratives aren't random. They are psychological armor. They are attempts to stabilize a crumbling self-image. But even as they defend, something has shifted. The power dynamic has changed. For a long time, your effort kept the relationship alive. Your hope kept the conflict going. Your attempts to repair kept the illusion intact. When you give up, you remove the fuel, and suddenly they are confronted with something they rarely face: loss of control. Control is central to the narcissistic dynamic. It doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, steering conversations, invalidating feelings, shifting blame. Sometimes it's overt anger, intimidation, manipulation. But underneath it all is the need to remain dominant in the emotional landscape. When you stop responding, when you no longer seek their approval or fear their disapproval, that dominance erodes, and erosion creates panic. The narcissistic injury often activates a survival response. They may feel restless, irritated, or strangely unsettled. They might test you, send a casual message, provoke a reaction, make a cutting remark, to see if the old dynamic is still accessible. They are scanning for proof that they still matter. Because if they don't matter to you, it forces them to confront a void inside themselves. That void is something they've been running from their entire lives. Your giving up is not. loud revenge. It is not dramatic closure. It is a quiet withdrawal of emotional energy. But in the narcissistic system, that quiet withdrawal is seismic. It shakes the foundation of the false self. It exposes the dependency they would never admit. It reveals how much their identity relied on your participation. And here's the part that is both empowering and sobering. The injury is about them, not you. It is not proof that you were wrong. It is not proof that you were inadequate. It is proof that your emotional engagement had value. When you remove it, they feel the absence. The moment you give up is the moment the illusion fractures. They may not show it immediately, they may mask it with arrogance or indifference. But internally, the crack has formed. The first stage of collapse has begun, not because you attacked them, not because you fought harder, but because you stopped. And sometimes the most powerful move you will ever make is the decision to no longer play. After the initial injury comes something that looks almost unimpressive on the surface: denial. If the first stage is the crack in the foundation, this second stage is the frantic attempt to pretend the crack does not exist. When the narcissist realizes you've given up, their first psychological defense is not sorrow, not accountability, and certainly not insight. It is dismissal. They'll be back. That is the cue. I eat script running in their mind. Denial is powerful because it protects the ego from collapse. If they admit, even internally, that you are truly done, they must face the reality that they have lost control. And for someone whose identity is built on control and superiority, that realization is intolerable. So instead, they minimize you. They minimize your strength. They minimize your resolve. They tell themselves that you are emotional, impulsive, dramatic. They assume your silence is temporary. In their worldview, you cannot possibly mean it. This is not confidence. It is psychological self-preservation. They may act indifferent. They may even laugh about it. They might tell others that you are overreacting or that you needed space. They create narratives that shrink your independence into something manageable. Because if they accept that you are fully detached, it means they miscalculated. It means they overestimated their power. And that is something their ego cannot easily digest. Underneath this denial, however, is anxiety. They are watching you more closely than you realize. If you post less, they notice. If you seem happier, they notice. If mutual friends mention that you are moving forward, they notice. Denial does not mean ignorance. It means distortion. They reinterpret what they see in a way that soothes them. If you look peaceful, they may convince themselves, you are pretending. If you look strong, they may decide you are trying to provoke them. Everything becomes filtered through a lens that protects their superiority. What makes this stage so fascinating is that it often includes arrogance. They might double down on the idea that you need them more than they need you. They may remind themselves of all the times you chased, apologized, tried to fix things. They replay those memories as proof that you will eventually return. In their mind, your past effort guarantees your future compliance. But here's the flaw. They are basing their prediction on who you used to be. They do not fully register that something inside you has shifted. They are interacting with an outdated version of you, the one who still hoped, still tried, still believed change was possible. Denial allows them to stay frozen in that version of reality. It keeps them from confronting growth they did not anticipate. During this phase, you may even see small tests, casual messages, a vague comment, a subtle attempt to spark jealousy. These are not full-blown manipulations yet. They are temperature checks. They are looking for signs that the old dynamic is still accessible. If you respond with emotion, even irritation, it reassures them. It confirms that they still occupy space in your psyche. But if you don't respond, denial becomes harder to sustain. And this is where the internal tension builds. Because while they are telling themselves you'll be back, time is passing, you are not reaching out, you are not reacting. You are not circling back into the same arguments. Each day that goes by quietly erodes their narrative. Denial is also fueled by entitlement. Many narcissists operate with a deep belief that they are exceptional. Exceptional people, in their minds, do not get abandoned. They do the abandoning. They choose when relationships end. So when you choose instead, it disrupts that hierarchy, it flips the script, and rather than accept that shift, they temporarily refuse to acknowledge it. This stage can look calm from the outside. They may even seem unaffected, but internally it is unstable. Denial requires constant mental reinforcement. They must keep telling themselves the story. They must keep dismissing the evidence. And that takes energy. Over time, cracks begin to widen. Because the truth is this: when someone truly gives up, their energy changes. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is steady. And steady silence is very difficult to argue with. The narcissist cannot debate silence. They cannot twist it easily. They cannot gaslight absence. Eventually, denial starts to feel less convincing. But in this second stage, they cling to it. They cling to the belief that you are temporary in your resolve. They cling to the assumption that you still need their validation. They cling to the comfort of superiority. And while they are clinging, you are moving. That movement, your quiet forward momentum, is what makes this stage so powerful. Because while they are busy convincing themselves you'll be back, you are learning how to live without looking over your shoulder. And when denial finally cracks, the next stage is far less composed. For now, though, they sit in dismissal. They tell themselves it's a phase. They reassure their ego that nothing significant has changed. But beneath that surface confidence is something they would never admit out loud: the unsettling awareness that you might actually be gone. When denial can no longer hold, when the evidence becomes too loud to ignore, the emotional shift is dramatic. This is the stage where the ego strikes back. If the first stage was injury and the second was dismissal, the third is rage. Not quiet irritation, not mild frustration, rage that feels disproportionate, sharp, and at times shocking. Because now the narcissist understands something they were trying desperately not to face. You are not coming back. Rage in this context is not about love. It is about control. When you gave up, you disrupted the power structure. When you stopped reacting, you removed the reinforcement that kept them emotionally dominant. And when they realized that dominant Sue is gone, anger becomes their weapon of choice. Anger is powerful. Anger feels strong. Anger covers shame. Remember, beneath every narcissistic collapse is shame, deep, corrosive shame that they cannot tolerate. But instead of turning inward and reflecting, they externalize it. They push it outward. They assign blame. And suddenly, you are not the person who quietly detached. You are the villain in their story. This is when retaliation can begin. Retaliation does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, a smear campaign disguised as concern, a carefully crafted narrative shared with mutual friends, a social media post meant to provoke. Other times it is overt, angry messages, accusations, sudden hostility. The goal is not resolution. The goal is to destabilize you, because if they can destabilize you, they can restore the old dynamic. Your calm is threatening. Your peace is insulting. Your indifference feels like abandonment. And abandonment, whether real or perceived, touches their deepest wound. Many narcissistic patterns are rooted in early experiences of insecurity or emotional neglect. So when you step away, it unconsciously echoes something much older. But instead of processing that vulnerability, they convert it into aggression. You may notice an escalation in behavior during this phase. They may try to provoke jealousy by flaunting a new relationship. They may attempt to trigger guilt by portraying themselves as the victim. They may even rewrite history in ways that are so distorted you question your own memory. This is not accidental. It is strategic, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. Rage serves a purpose. It creates noise, and noise is a distraction from collapse. If they can pull you back into defending yourself, explaining yourself, arguing again, then the supply resumes. Even conflict is supply. Even tears are supply. What they cannot tolerate is irrelevance. Your silence communicates irrelevance. Your lack of reaction says, you no longer have access to my emotional world. And that is intolerable to someone who built their identity around occupying center stage. There is also something deeply wounded in this stage: entitlement. The narcissist often believes they are owed loyalty, attention, forgiveness. So when you withdraw those things, it feels like injustice. In their mind, they may genuinely believe you are wronging them. That belief fuels the intensity of their anger. It allows them to justify behavior that might otherwise seem extreme. But here's the paradox. The more reactive they become, the more they reveal the depth of the injury. Healthy anger seeks resolution. Narcissistic rage seeks control. It is not about repairing connection. It is about reestablishing hierarchy. They want to feel above you again. They want to feel powerful again. And if intimidation, guilt, or humiliation can achieve that, they may use it. This stage can be frightening because it feels unpredictable. The person who once appeared indifferent may suddenly become intense. The one who dismissed you may now seem obsessed with proving something. That intensity is not love resurfacing, it is ego fighting for survival. And if you remain steady, if you do not re-engage in the old cycle, the rage eventually exhausts itself, because anger without reaction has nowhere to land. More you refuse to play the role they assigned you. The reactive one, the apologetic one, the pursuer, the clearer it becomes that the old system cannot be restored. And that realization pushes the collapse deeper. Rage is the ego's last loud attempt to avoid facing vulnerability. When the rage fails to bring you back, when the retaliation does not provoke the response they expect, something shifts again. The anger that once felt powerful begins to feel ineffective. And when a narcissist's anger no longer controls the environment, it leaves them exposed. This stage is turbulent. It is noisy. It can be painful to witness, but it is also revealing. Because in their fury, you see the truth. Your withdrawal mattered. Your absence disrupted them. Your silence shook something real. And the louder they become, the clearer it is that the internal collapse is no longer theoretical. It is unfolding. When rage fails, when the anger, the accusations, the attempts to provoke you do not pull you back into the old cycle, the strategy shifts. The volume lowers. The sharp edges soften, and what emerges next can be deeply confusing if you don't understand what's happening. This is the stage of hoovering and manipulation, the desperate pull designed to draw you back into orbit. The term hoovering exists for a reason. It reflects the attempt to suck you back into the dynamic just when you have begun to detach. But this stage is not fueled by love or genuine reflection. It is fueled by survival. By now, the narcissist has felt the injury, exhausted denial, and tested rage. None of it restored control. None of it brought you back. So they pivot. Suddenly, the tone changes. They may reach out with nostalgia. I've been thinking about the good times. They may apologize, but in a vague, non-specific way. I'm sorry for everything. They may express vulnerability. I didn't realize how much you meant to me. They may even appear softer than you've ever seen them. This shift can feel disorienting because it contrasts so sharply with the anger that came before. But this is not transformation. It is recalibration. The narcissistic system is adaptive when threatened. If intimidation does not work, charm might. If rage pushes you further away, vulnerability might pull you closer. The goal remains the same: regain access to your emotional energy. What changes is the tactic. You might notice that their outreach seems timed. It often appears when you are finally finding peace, when you have begun to rebuild your routine, when you seem steady. It is almost as if they sense the emotional distance solidifying, and that sensing is real. People who rely heavily on external validation are highly attuned to shifts in attention. Your absence is loud to them. In this stage, they may promise change. They may say they've reflected. They may suggest therapy, growth, a new beginning. And while growth is theoretically possible for anyone, true change requires sustained accountability and deep self-examination. What you often see here is urgency, not transformation. Urgency to stop the bleeding, urgency to restore supply. The emotional hook during hoovering is hope, because part of you once wanted this. You wanted acknowledgement, you wanted softness, you wanted effort, and when it finally appears, even if late, it can stir something inside you. That stirring is what they are counting on, not your logic, your longing. They may also use guilt. After everything we've been through, I can't believe you're just walking away. You're giving up so easily. Notice the subtle reframing. The narrative shifts from their behavior to your departure. Your boundary becomes abandonment in their story. Your healing becomes cruelty. Hoovering is often layered. There may be kindness followed by subtle criticism, apology followed by blame, warmth followed by distance. This inconsistency keeps you emotionally off balance. It reactivates the very cycle you were trying to escape. The unpredictability creates anxiety, and anxiety reopens attachment. But here is what defines this stage internally for them: desperation. By now, they have felt what life is like without your steady validation, without your arguments, without your attempts to repair. The silence has created space, and space forces them to confront their own emptiness. Instead of sitting with that emptiness, they attempt to refill it with you. If you respond cautiously, they may intensify the charm. If you remain distant, they may escalate vulnerability. If you stay silent, they may alternate between sweetness and subtle hostility. Each move is a test. Each response you give is data. And if you do not re-engage in the old way, something profound happens. The manipulation stops working. This is where the internal collapse deepens, because hoovering is often their most reliable strategy. It has worked before. It has brought you back before. It has restored control before. When it fails, it confronts them with a painful truth. You are no longer emotionally accessible in the same way. That realization is destabilizing. They may begin to feel anxiety they cannot name, restlessness, a compulsive need to distract themselves. They may seek attention elsewhere more aggressively. But underneath all of it is the awareness that the person who once responded predictably is no longer predictably. And unpredictability means loss of control. The desperate pull is revealing because it exposes the dependency they would never admit. The one who appeared indifferent is now reaching. The one who dismissed you is now persuading. The one who raged is now softening. These shifts are not random. They are responses to your withdrawal. If you remain grounded during this stage, if you see the pattern without being drawn back into it, you begin to understand something powerful. Your detachment is not weakness. It is strength. It is clarity, and clarity is the one thing the narcissistic dynamic cannot easily manipulate. When hoovering fails, when manipulation no longer restores the illusion, the collapse moves inward. The mask begins to strain, and what comes next is quieter, but far more revealing.